Oh, how's it going there, ladies and germs? Welcome to another movie review. I'm Shaun from Zoobox. Welcome to the channel. If this is your first time, this is just an off-the-cuff, extemporaneous thoughts about a movie. The movie in question is Denis Villeneuve's adaptation of Frank Herbert's Dune, the seminal science fiction classic written sometime in the 60s. I think 1968 maybe it came out. Maybe? Somewhere in there. And yeah, so it just came out, just premiered in theaters and on HBO Max. I ended up watching it on HBO Max. I had originally was going to go see it in the theater. I really wanted to. I wanted to go do the IMAX thing, but it might be a while before that's just a thing I can do, just because of life scheduling. So I was like, fuck it. I'm never going to be able to wait. Like, I could wait a couple days maybe, and I'd still end up watching it on the TV. So I said, fuck it. I'm just going to watch it. I'm just going to get it done. It's going to do it. And I've actually kind of watched it almost twice. Because I watched it last night, then I went to bed, and then, I get up really early with my son for school. And once he was off to school, I had some time to kill this morning. And I ended up watching it again. And the reason why I watched it again was because I didn't know how I felt about it. I was like, kind of ambivalent. The first time I watched it, I kind of was like, oh, that was like very big. Just like everybody's been saying. That's like the review that you'll hear from most people. Dune is it's really massive. It's a real technical cinematic achievement. And they're right. They're not wrong. If Dune does anything good, if Denis Villeneuve does anything good, it is scale. And this is something we got to see back when he did Blade Runner 2049, or even Arrival, a few of his past movies. He really understands like scale and scope, and big, broad stroke storytelling, which is something that would be good. It's good for something like Dune, because Dune is very archetypal. Dune's like pulling from a lot of kind of in the same way that Star Wars does. It's very like Joseph Campbell, hero's journey. It does some stuff in there to kind of subvert that. And which this movie doesn't get into, because this movie is about 60% of the book. About 60%. And it moves at a fucking clip, I'll tell you that much. Holy shit. It moves. It moves. So, I have read the book. I've read the first Dune. It's the only Dune book I've read. I have not continued with the series as of yet. Just really haven't gotten around to it. But in anticipation of seeing this, I had always wanted to read Dune. The movie was coming out. I said, great time to read it. So I end up reading Dune in the summer of 2019. So it was like 2 years ago. And I thought it was fine. I enjoyed it a lot. But my big takeaway was, like, I have been inundated with so much science fiction stuff that has ripped Dune off, that Dune was a little bit of a known quantity. It wasn't very surprising. A lot of the drama and stuff kind of almost fell a little flat, because I felt like I'd already read it before. I'd already like experienced the story. I've been, like I said, you're just so saturated with things that like literally ripped Dune off. It's kind of like the Lord of the Rings. Once you like read the Lord of the Rings, you really understand like how fantasy fiction was built from it, and everything else cribs from Lord of the Rings. Most of the things that I started reading Terry Brooks when I was a kid. That's like the science fiction author I started with. And then in my late teens, I ended up reading all of the Lord of the Rings books after I'd read all the Terry Brooks books. And I was like, holy shit, like Terry Brooks really cribbed pretty liberally, especially in the first couple of the Shannara novels. Pretty liberally from Lord of the Rings. And I have the same kind of sense and feeling with Dune. But the movie itself, like I said, huge fucking movie. I wish that I had an opportunity to see an IMAX. If I have the opportunity, I might, even though I've already watched it twice, I might go. I might go just to see some of this stuff on a big screen and with like a really good sound system. That's another great thing. A lot of the positives of Dune lie in the technical feat of making it. It's fucking huge, and it does it well. Like, you feel the scale. Like, you feel the size of everything. The sound design is magnificent. The score is excellent. It's an excellent pairing with, like, kind of the visuals and the direction they went with that stuff. And it has almost this ethereal kind of abstract feeling to it as well. Because it felt like almost like artsy in a way. Some of it reminded me a lot of Jodorowsky's Dune. Like if you go watch the documentary about Jodorowsky's unmade Dune movie that he wanted in the 70s, if you look at a lot of the concept art and stuff, it's actually, some of it seems like you could draw some comparisons here. Because there is like this kind of, it's very alien, unearthly, which makes sense, right? But it's also seems wildly impractical and logistically insane. Because I think what Denis Villeneuve's really getting at when he's like part of the scale and the size of everything is just kind of almost there as a visual metaphor for power, for distinguished, your ability to distinguish yourself from everywhere else. Like it is like shock and awe, the size of what you can amass. For power, for empire, I guess would be the right word. To show what the scale of empire in this galactic sense, right? And he does a really great job. So I guess this is really more, so in that sense, like it was a really great experience. So this is where like some of my like kind of, I guess, criticisms you could call, I guess you call it criticisms. It really moves. It really moves through that story, and it feels very disjointed because of that. Like the pace is unrelenting. I never really got a great sense of a lot of the characters, or why I should really care about them, or even felt like I even really liked them, or understood them on some deeper level. And I was, like I said, I watched it twice, and because of the first time I was like, oh, maybe it was me, maybe I was like kind of tired, and like maybe I just like, I don't know. Maybe I was tired, and maybe it was just hard to focus or something. And so I gave it another go. And no, I think it's just part of it's the structure of the movie. I think it's just the nature of the adaptation, and being so literal of an adaptation. Like it is very faithful in what it's doing. It's like super faithful. But to be that faithful, and without changing anything at all, you have to really compact a lot of stuff. And it compacted more than I thought it was. Like, the movie goes on for an hour where I thought logically, like, it should stop. Or I thought it was going to stop around a certain point. And it kept going. It had like another 45 minutes, an hour left. I was like, holy shit, we're just going to keep going, huh? And, and it truncates some things, but it fundamentally doesn't change anything, and it's very faithful of an adaptation. And it's frustrating. You really feel like you watched half a movie. It really, and that's the problem with like almost like talking about it, is that judging this as its own movie, as its own narrative, it would be bad. Because it plays out like 2 acts, and there's no third act. I don't even know if it's really plays out. It's like 1.5 acts. Like, we feel like we just get into things. We're just getting into the nature of Arrakis and the Fremen, and just kind of getting to know some of the characters that we know. And I know all that stuff is going to be built out in the second part 2. Allegedly, from what I understand, they have like a 3-part structure that they're going to do. They're going to do like 3 books. So the next movie will be the rest of Dune, but also part of the next book, I think, Dune Messiah, maybe that's what it's called, or Children of Dune. No, Dune Messiah and then Children of Dune. I think that's what comes after. Don't quote me on that. I'm not a Dune super fan. I am not a Frank Herbert aficionado. But that's what I heard the scuttle was, at least from the movie side of it, that they were kind of wanted to go in that direction with it. And like, that sounds interesting. And I know they're going to build out some of this stuff. Although, now that I'm thinking about it, now we've just spent 2.5 hours with, like, learning about the Atreides and learning about them coming to Arrakis and what their, like, kind of position is in this kind of galactic empire. How the Emperor felt about the Atreides and stuff like that. And now we're just going to have to spend the next 2.5 hours, I assume, really investing time in the Fremen. These free people, the Fremen, you get it? Do you get it? Spelled Fremen. Do you get it? It's an example of it's like very tropey, old school sci-fi stuff. Like if you've read a lot of like short fiction and science fiction short stories and novels over the years, shit like that's very common. You know, like, oh, it's the Fremen, but it kind of sounds like Freeman, like Freemen. They're out there. They're the desert people. Casting I thought was pretty good. Rebecca Ferguson is excellent. Oscar Isaac. I always say Isaac. I always want to say Isaac first, but Oscar Isaac is a great Duke Leto. Stellan Skarsgård, fucking fantastic Baron. Kind of stole the movie from me, for me rather. I really wanted to just hang out with Stellan Skarsgård's Baron. I could have watched that dude be that character forever. He is just gross and fucking just pure evil, and he does a great job. It's a super memorable performance. And I would say most of the performances are really great. Charlotte Rampling, as one of the Bene Gesserit like priestesses, is really good. Jason Momoa is not a great actor, and he's fine here. He's fine. He's kind of whatever. It's Duncan Idaho. Actually, I never pictured somebody like him in my mind's eye, like reading the story and stuff, as Duncan Idaho. But I thought, like, yeah, Duncan Idaho, while he's kind of loose and charming, is also just like a little bit more like grounded, serious. But anyways, that's just adaptation. You got to give him a break. But he was fine. He's a little flat, but he's fine. I don't know. Like, I don't know what you're gonna get out of this if you haven't read the novel. Like, I'd be very surprised, or no, not surprised. I'd be very interested to hear what the general public thinks of Dune. Because I can watch it as somebody that's read the novels, and I see where all the gaps are, and I can fill them in with knowledge from the book. And so some of the stuff that may not make sense probably washed over me, because I just kind of know it. I just intuitively kind of know it. And most people aren't going to have that experience that watch this. Because I felt like it was kind of choppy, like, almost like scattered, like you get just enough to understand what's going on. But like I said, I don't know if that's because I'm so informed by everything else I've read about Dune. Like, I'm so informed about the world from the novel that I know who they are. I know who, like, Dr. Yue is relative to the Atreides, and why what he does is a big deal. And like, I know, like, some of the other manifestations that are going on, some of the machinations of the plot that they don't really spend very much time with, if any time at all, with in the movie. That's the thing about the novel Dune, is that it's very, I would say, laborious to get through. I had a tough time getting through it. It's a little tedious because it actually is a very simple story, just layered with bullshit. Like, the main strand of the story is simple. It's very interesting. It's a really great subversion of a few tropes, which are interesting because this movie, or the critical community that clearly was not familiar with the novels, like when they did the preview screenings and stuff, they were like saying it's like a white savior movie and stuff. And trust me, I'm not going to tell you what the deal is, but if you've read the book, you know that's not true. In fact, it's like a really interesting conversation about not the white savior trope, because that wasn't really a thing when Frank Herbert wrote it, but the idea of saviors in general and what that means, and the mode of religion in people's lives and how that can influence things, and what are the powers that be that are, part of these very kind of ancient secret belief systems. Like, what are they doing to pull levers? It's a lot of interesting stuff. The movie touches on that stuff a little bit. I did like that the movie definitely acknowledges the role of the Bene Gesserit in a bigger way, because it's something that, like, if you were going to do just, it's kind of straightforward. It's like Game of Thrones in space, which is not a totally ridiculous comparison, but you could have cut out a lot of that stuff and had like a sci-fi action epic movie. But the real heart of Dune, it needs that. So I'm very curious to see how that will develop if they get future movies. I'm very up in the air about it. Very conflicted. I don't know how to feel about it, other than to say it's fucking massive. If you have the opportunity, I would recommend seeing it on a big screen. I'd recommend going to an IMAX or something. Even with my kind of qualms about it, some of my comments here I know have not been like overly positive. It is a fucking massive spectacle. It's a massive spectacle. I just don't. Denis Villeneuve, there's just, most of his stuff, I don't know if he nails stories well. I'm just, I go back through his filmography, from Enemy, Prisoners, Polytechnic, Arrival, Blade Runner 2049. It's interesting. He's definitely a technical maestro. Really understands, like I said, scale and stuff. But sometimes there's not a lot underneath what he's doing, or he just doesn't. There's a lack of coherence. There's something missing. I don't know. I can't really quite. I'm having a hard time articulate it, just off the top of the old dome there. But I've always felt like there's been a deficit of something. It's like when I saw Blade Runner 2049, saw it in the theater. Actually watched it. I think I saw it in 3D in the theater. Had a great experience because that's another movie. It's fucking massive. You feel the scale and the weight, and there's almost like an abstract art quality to it. And the same with Dune, but in subsequent viewings of Blade Runner 2049, outside of production design and some of the performances and stuff, and the scale of the movie, I've been kind of underwhelmed by it. And Dune, I kind of felt the same way. Watching it even again. I'm probably end up going to watch it one more time this weekend. I know my wife wants to watch it, so I'll probably end up watching it like Sunday night or something. But I don't know. It's okay that it's just okay, I suppose. But I'm hoping it really sucks. Like, it's hard to even judge it because you don't see the conclusion, and the way where it ends and how it ends is actually feels pretty abrupt. You're not seeing a completion of any real arc. They're trying to imply that there was an arc there about like kind of Paul Atreides coming to terms with his future. And they say that's what happened, and you're like, well, I did not see that in the movie. It's not really textually supported in what happens in the movie, or at least what we're privy to during what we see of the story. It's going to be interesting. I don't know if there should be like an extended cut of this, because I feel like if this had some more room to breathe, probably at a 3-hour runtime would probably benefit the movie. Actually, it would help some of the problems I have with it, smooth some of this stuff out, let us spend a little bit more time with characters, let us invest in the world a little bit more before it kind of starts ramping up. I think that would have been to its benefit, but I don't know. Like I said, if you're a film fan, you're a cineast, go see Dune. If you're a general sci-fi fan, go see Dune. You're gonna. I think you'll get something out of it no matter what, even if it is ultimately not the most satisfying of experiences. That's what I'll say, and that's where I'll end it. I don't want to get into spoilers or anything. I'm sure I will talk about this in the future, maybe with the rest of the Zoobox crew. Who knows? We shall see. All right, everybody. Have a good one.